Hey y'all, Betty here with Compliant Healthcare Solutions, along with my good buddy and colleague Sonal Patel of SP Collaborative.
Hey, my friend Betty. So good to see you. Happy February. We are in a
Oh,
brand new month. Oh
yes,
my
yes,
goodness, right?
and it's a short one,
It's a
so
short
that
month,
means
but still, the
it'll
year
be
has
coming
already flown
quicker.
by. We are
Yes,
done with January. I'm in
I know,
shock. I'm like, what
I
is
know,
happening?
I know, and
2024 again is rapidly running away from us already. So,
I
welcome to the
remember when
month
you
of
were a kid.
love.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
when you were a kid,
February.
you always thought it took forever. And then now it's always just like, man, it's so fast. Like
I
the new
know.
year, you never think Christmas is going to get here, and then all of a sudden it's Thanksgiving, and you're like, what the heck?
Exactly. No, you're so right. When we were children, absolutely, the days were so long. It seemed like we had forever, right? But
Yeah.
now, flash forward
Yeah.
now as grown adults, it's the months
Speak
just
for
fly
yourself.
by. Fly. That's right. I will. Oh my goodness.
It's mostly grown adults. Yeah,
Yeah,
real.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yes, no, yeah, definitely. But we're on our month of giving the advisory opinions a little love. Speaking of it being the month of love, right, Sonal?
Yes, that's
So
right. For sure. We're going to put the love on advisory opinions from the OIG, something that's not really talked about a lot. So we definitely want to put all our love into talking about these documents that we both think are really, really useful to the industry. So yeah, it's good.
and we got off on a tangent at the beginning, but this is a new episode of Compliance Capers. So
Yeah, sorry. Welcome.
I know.
Welcome to another episode of Compliance Capers. But when you and I get together, we do have fun. So
Yes,
we
yes.
need our audience to know that as well. We try and, put these little end caps of compliance at the end of our weeks on Friday, and it's just going to be casual conversations. So,
Yeah.
yes, we apologize in advance if you hear us laughing from time to time together. But that's because we do work together and we're really good friends. So, we really want to, again, emphasize compliance, addressing these capers, to make sure that our providers aren't considered a compliance caper at any time in their
Mm.
careers, right? So, yeah.
And you can learn without it being all doom and gloom. It doesn't have to be every 5
Absolutely.
minutes somebody saying you're going to jail, you're going to jail. So,
Right. No,
we just try to, lighten things up a little bit. And
we do.
that's definitely, when Sonal and I are speaking, anybody that's ever seen us doing anything together have already come to that conclusion. So
For
we're glad
sure.
that y'all are here. So we decided for today's, we were going to take a look at a favorable advisory opinion. So y'all will recall in the last episode, we went through and gave a foundation of what the advisory opinions are from the OIG, how you can request one, that it does cost money and how much it could cost, and all of those good things so that, you understand now, and hopefully since the last episode have kind of went out there and checked on these yourselves to see if there's anything out there that does apply to your practice. But we thought for the rest of the episodes this month, we'd actually take an advisory opinion each time and kind of go through it so that, as Sonal had said last episode, sometimes the way that they say things in the advisory opinions, when they give them, you're still sitting there going, what? When we look at it. So
Yeah.
we thought we would kind of go through one in its entirety each time so that we could kind of break it down, so that if you were going through, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. So what we're going to take a look at today, and then again, if you go out to where the advisory opinions are, and I will to this link here, you can search for, a specific advisory opinion if you know. So the one we're looking at today is OIG Advisory Opinion number 23-15. So 23-15. It was issued on December 28th of 23, but posted on January 3rd of 2024. So this is one that was just posted at the beginning of the year.
Great.
So now with this one, and two, as Sonal had said, brought up in the last episode, when they put these out, it doesn't like name names. So, you're not going to be able to like call out, Joe's, hearing aid shop or whatever from something. And it says on there that they do redact identifying information. So that's when you're looking at, and they keep talking about a requestor, and proposed arrangements and stuff. So they do a lot of legalese talking in here. So you kind of have to pay attention at the beginning to see, like who the requestor is that they're going to be mentioning throughout, because they're never going to say the name of the practice or the name of the company. They'll just keep calling them the requestor, like you see in contracts. So with this one, it's a favorable outcome. So whatever the question was that we'll go through that they posed, the OIG at the end was telling them, oh, we think you're good, right? So for the beginning of it, Sonal, do you kind of want to break down that like first rushing of what it is that they're asking the OIG about?
Absolutely, right? So we wanted to, again, re-emphasize something that's favorable, right, to start our conversations off for the month. So in this particular case, in their advisory opinion request, this requestor is asking for a proposal to offer physician practices that are current customers of requestor certain gift cards for referring potential new physician practice customers. So that is the proposed arrangement. And so I hope when I read that to you out loud, you can hear the legalese, right? That complex talk that is documented, right? So what does that mean? So what they're asking for, this requestor, is not a physician, right? No, they are proposing to offer their physician practices who are their current customers, right? Gift cards. So in fact, when we pulled this particular OIG opinion, our ears perked up, our eyes lit up, because it's for a consultant services, right? And so, of course, my good friend here and I looked like, oh, they're talking about consultants, right? A consultant or a consultant company, whoever, they put this advisory opinion request in. So, for all of our colleagues who are similar to us, I think this was a really informative piece of information for things that we may do from time to time in our businesses, right? So I think it's really, really interesting to read further and find out, what the underlying overall favorable rationale happened to be as we go through it. But so that's in the first sentence of the document, right? And so it says from the OIG specifically, you have inquired whether the proposed arrangement, if undertaken, would constitute grounds for the imposition of sanctions under the exclusion authority at Section 1128B7 of the Social Security Act, or the civil monetary penalty authority provision at Section 1128A7 of the Social Security Act, as those sections relate to the commission of acts described in the sections above, right? So they're talking about the federal anti-kickbacks statute, which they reveal further in the document. But so this particular consultant and consultant company really asked the right questions, right? Like, what is going to be at play here if we decide to go forth with these gift cards, right? That's the greater service line that they're questioning here, is can we deliver these gift cards to our already existing paying customers, these physician practices? So that's a little bit more simple language, in my opinion, after we read this time and time again between ourselves, because again, we are not attorneys, right? So yes, we see this language very, very often, and we've learned to read it, but we want our audience to help, identify what the greater complexity of the language is in this document, right? So in simple terms, it's a consulting service company that's asking for, can I do this? Can I partake in these types of gift cards for our existing customers? Are we allowed to do that?
So yeah, that's a great way of putting it in, terms that everybody's going to get. It makes me think, and I can't remember if I saw it on like a Three Stooges where they were like the party of the first part was like to the party of the second part.
Right, it is Three Stooges. What? Right.
But it when you're saying it too, it makes you think of, because I remember back in the day, because I'm an old timer, right? So when we were in the offices, I worked at one point for some infectious disease specialists. And it was when ID was like a new specialty area, and there really weren't any of them anywhere. And so we had the only two that were in the city proper or the surrounding area. It was them. And every year at Christmas time, they would get just baskets and, wines and all this kind of, all the people that they had gotten referrals from and who they referred patients to them. And so you would get that exchange of the big gifts, right? And it was like, well, you'd sit down and say, how many referrals did we get from so-and-so? Well, then they get this size basket. And then how many,
that makes sense.
Anti-kickback stuff came out, and it was like, we can't do that anymore. So when you were talking about what this consulting firm, this requestor is asking, that's immediately where my head went to, is that, you think about it in that aspect of what it reminded me of was in the realm of in practice, when I was in practices, and what used to be okay, but coming to the end of this, when we get there, kind of see where there really is a big difference between this requestor and what I just gave as an example, though. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But so they're looking at it from that anti-kickback, meaning that I'm going to give you something of value for you giving me something, to where I will get monies from some federal government programs, so when they're listing that statute, that's kind of where they're going with it, right?
Exactly. And that's where the consulting company, the requestor, wanted it to be spelled out, right? They needed to be reminded of the fact that they are not going to be getting any remuneration from the federal government, right? This requestor has nothing to do with the federal government. They're not, sending claims. They're not getting remuneration back from the federal government. So it's a really interesting document, right? Once you unfold it, and where the greater questioning came from the requestor, right? Because as you and I know, healthcare business matters are incredibly complex. So I love to see that this particular requestor put the time in to asking, right? And as we disclosed in last week's episode, it is pricey, right? It will cost you to receive this really, really timely information. So I give them kudos, like, good job for asking if it's okay for you to, receive those gift cards. I liked it. And I like how the OIG discloses how they are protected and they're not actually breaking any of the federal regs.
And I and thank you, by the way, for saying that word, because I can't say that word right without messing it up.
Remuneration.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, yeah. I'm not even
Yes.
gonna try
Yes.
it because
Yes.
people just laugh. So, but one thing I wanted to point out too for people that are looking, if you haven't seen an advisory opinion before, I printed the one out we're talking about today. So, on the front, it's like their letter, the OIG's letter back to the requestor, because it starts out with the date and that it's favorable, but then it says, "Dear," and then it redacts it because, again, they're
Perfect.
not going to put their
Mhm.
business out there. And
Right.
then it starts with, the OIG, as Sonal pointed out with that first paragraph, and then that the requestor certifies that everything is true and accurate, and
Oh, yeah,
it's
that's a
a
great point.
complete description. And then, they're basing this on the relevant facts that are certified in what you're doing. So they kind of do that. But then on the next pages they go through, then they kind of break it down into sections for you if you're looking at it. So you have one was the factual background, and that's the part
Right.
two that Sonal was talking about, that they are a consulting company and they give consulting services to physician practices. So you can see the background on the question. And then they go into the legal analysis because it's the OIG advisory opinion that you're asking for. So they're going to tell
Right.
you from a legal perspective, this is where we see that you may or may not, or what your question kind of hinged on. So they give you kind of a little bit more information on that. And then it goes into an analysis. And so here is our analysis of that background information and the legal points that you asked about. So
Right.
it kind of takes you step by step through the whole process, which I like how they lay these out.
Agreed.
And then it gives you a conclusion of, yes, you can do this, or no, you shouldn't do that. And then gives you some limitations. Once again, where they say the opinion is limited to the scope of the question you asked, you shouldn't add anything to it. It can't
Right.
be, so it gives all those kind of caveats there at the end. And then they say, like, sincerely, and then they sign off on it. And in this case, it's the Assistant Inspector General for Legal Affairs that, sent the
Wow.
letter out.
Wow.
So
Okay.
if you look at these, you really can just kind of follow through. It's not just they say, yeah, that's okay, or no, that's not cool, and that's it. They give you all the little tidbits and nuggets about what you're trying to do or want to do all the way through it. So if at administrative level at the company you work for, if y'all are the ones that sit this out, you can take it to them and say, here, this is why we can't, or this is why they say we can. And here are the statutes, so that if you want to dig into them some more, you can go dig into them some more. So they really lay it out nice when they go through here for people. I really like that. And if they're going to pay thousands of dollars to get their opinion, it would be nice that they lay it out in such a manner, which is good. It's kind of reminds me of like a brief, right? When they
Yeah.
go through them and list all the stuff.
Exactly. I love how they write, right? You and I are very familiar with how attorneys write their massive briefs, right? And it's very methodical. And I love it because it literally is an outline of their thought process, right? I think it's really, really well done. And you can also gain a lot of food for thought in their footnotes as well.
Yes.
Just like a brief, they have so many nuggets that are inside of the footnote, right? So not in the main document itself, but in the footnote. And they'll highlight what the greater federal reg is, or if there was a previous advisory opinion that talked about something very, very similar, they'll put that nugget in a footnote. I think that's genius. I really love, and that also shows that we are big, big nerds. We love reading these types of documents. We embrace education wholeheartedly. And we've also then, and therefore, learned how to read a lot of these
Yeah.
attorneys and how they write. And we've learned to really educate ourselves on the greater meaning of what they're trying to say in these documents.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're total nerds and we love it.
Yes. And we're passing our nerdship on to y'all. So
Yes, and yes. So if you inherit it, please take it and run with it. We want to see more people like that out there. Absolutely.
definitely.
Yes. Yes.
Now, in the factual background, which is on the second page, where they talk about, giving the pieces that they have already told them, they got specific too in the second paragraph. Once again, for y'all, when you go look for things, if you want to see like the absolute kind of nitty gritty. So in the second paragraph, it says, actually the resulter would give its current customers that recommend, another physician practice, they give them a $25 gift card. So it's giving out the monetary value here. And then it says, if that recommendation is successful, so the person actually signs a contract with this consulting company, then they give them another $50 gift card to that referring office. So, and that's important because with the anti-kickback laws, they're talking about things that are of a certain value. And I remember we used to always say, well, you can't send anything now that's over $40, or you can't have everything. So it really came down to like the monetary value of some of these things too. So in looking at things, that's another thing to consider is, what is it? I remember we had, remember when drug companies used to get lunch every
Lunches.
day?
Yes, every day.
This and but
Yes.
when the anti-kickback and all these things came out to where, it can't be, some of them were spending, 800 plus
hundreds of dollars on this food,
bringing the lunch in.
Right.
And so we had one drug rep, I remember, told me once that she always did this. So it didn't change because of the laws, but she would make the lunches that she would bring in for us. And and it was always like, like in the winter, it would be like chilies and different, and the company actually made her like figure out the costs of the ingredients that she was making, and to make sure that it didn't raise to a certain dollar amount. And I mean, it was just nuts.
How sad.
So
yeah,
that's something to kind of pay attention to too, where now in this case it was for a different reason, but there may be cases where it doesn't mean you absolutely, one office to another office can never ever give anything to each other, but you have to take a look at what the value of those things are that you're kind of exchanging with each other. So that was also something in here that kind of ticked off of my head when I read it, was the dollar amounts. I was like, oh, that's very good. So you have to think those things through if you want an opinion on being very, very specific, because you never know, some little detail like that may change the OIG's mind, from favorable to unfavorable, or unfavorable to favorable on giving their opinion on something.
That's right. That's such a great point, Betty, from, your experience in the past with how offices and practices were run before this whole anti-kickback thing.
It was a lot more fun.
Yeah, it was a lot more fun. Sorry, everybody, but we enjoyed it. Yeah, it was a lot more fun. And the lunches were great. The breakfasts were great, right? And now the caveat is, sort of, again, ask your healthcare attorney, but it's if you provide these types of food items, nourishment to your practices, that's how I see it, right? You're nourishing doctors. What is wrong with that, right? But again, now what they'd like to see with the nourishment, you need to be providing like a lunch and learn. Like the providers need to be learning something from your drug, from your medication, from whatever it is that you're trying to offer them at the practice, in addition to your nourishment that you're providing. Educate them on the product, the information that you want to deliver, right? Try and educate the practice, the staff, whoever. Try and, supplement the lunches with education. I think that's the big takeaway now. Flash forward years later to today's landscape where there's been a big kibosh on you can't feed your practices anymore. Like that's a no-no. If you do provide that hour of PowerPoint decks, a carousel, you're talking to them, you're chatting them up about education on the product, on the materials, that should be okay along with that tasty food that the doctors and APPs need, right? And their entire staff. So yeah, that's just a great point from the past that things have definitely totally changed. And so these types of questions, when it comes to additional remunerations, can it be done, right? Is it allowable? So it's good that these types of questions come into the OIG from time to time. And I think it's definitely great for all of us to put our eyeballs on these types of documents so then we can go back to, each and every one of our practices and say, well, no, as of the current January 8th OIG opinion, this is okay for right now, but I'm going to look again, for the spring, and I'll see if there's anything new that's out there. Because they may have changed their mind based on the new question that's come in and the new specifics that have come in.
Yeah. And that's what we were saying, you have to make sure when you're looking at it, it could be kind of what you do and it might fit, but it also could be kind of what you do and totally not fit. So,
right.
You really have to understand these when you're looking at them and see, okay, is this really applicable to me? Because you don't want to make a decision that, oh yeah, this is okay, when it's really not the same thing, or, oh, I shouldn't be doing that, to where maybe you're losing out on something because it's not exactly the same thing. So you have to be able to understand what you're looking at in them.
Agreed.
And in the analysis that they gave, on the third page is under B, where they give the whole analysis of it. They also compartmentalize that down into 3 different streams of what they were thinking about being, the gift card issue in the first place, and that what is the gift card for, and then who the person is that's giving the gift card, what services is it for. So then they really kind of pieced it out, and they then give their opinion for each separate piece. And in this case, their opinion was, big old thumbs up, right? We're not going to do anything to you if you're doing this. And the biggest reason why is from what we were talking about before, right? The fact that that you said the consulting company isn't getting paid from Medicare. They're not looking for federal money. They're getting paid from their clients. So, but I thought the MIPS thing was pretty interesting on this, because this consulting company obviously had something to do with helping their physician clients get better MIPS scores, or to put the MIPS out there, the quality improvement scores and all that kind of stuff, to get that information out there and to the payor. So did you want to talk about that specific angle of it? I thought that was the most interesting piece of this.
That was interesting in their original questioning, right? That did come out in the introduction for what their service lines were, right? But then in this analysis, when they came back and said, well, physician practice customers potentially would receive an opportunity to earn a fee as a result of the consulting services in the form of higher MIPS reimbursements from Medicare. But again, that's the job of the consulting company, right? That's their work, right? They're going to be the ones who will provide that information to their practices for them to elevate their MIPS scores appropriately, right? Based on what work they are doing for their client. So yeah, I think that probably was the motivating factor for this advisory opinion to come out, right? They wanted to ask them because of that. That's a really good point, that this particular company was probably feeling some stress, like, well, if we do such a great job for our provider, right, for our client, we're doing such a great job for them that they will get higher reimbursement appropriately based on the work we perform for them. So I think it's really unfolded nicely in how the OIG comes out and answers them, right? Is they talk about the first stream, like you said, it's going to be a big thumbs up. The second stream is going to be a big thumbs up, right? Neither the second nor third stream of remuneration would implicate the federal anti-kickback statute. Requester receives payments from physician practice customers for providing their consulting services to those customers. But the requester certified that it does not recommend to any customer the purchasing, leasing, or ordering of any item or service for which payment may be made in whole or in part under a federal health care program. That's the most important part, right? Is they're not receiving any remuneration from the government. That's
They're
the
just providing
biggest.
the service.
They're just providing their business service as the consulting company. That's all they are doing. But again, because we're in healthcare, it all just becomes so complicated, right? And we're trying to protect ourselves. So I think this was a great, great question that this consulting company came up with. I'm sure they talked to their in-house attorneys, right, and had lots of questions for them. And I'm sure they were, again, also advised to escalate it further to get the harder answers, right, in black and white from the OIG. So I applaud this requestor for going ahead and doing the right thing for themselves, for their business service line, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because anytime in healthcare, when you hear referral and then gift card or payment, you immediately
like we're all stressed out. Yeah.
So I think this is a good one, which is just like we have been saying, you got to look at the particulars and every but, every what if can change an answer. So and which is why they also in that advisory opinion at the end say that this is only based on what you said.
For that.
It's not to be taken for anything else. It's so remember, it's just specifically as it is out there.
Exactly.
But this was a real good one, I think, to start with. Like you said, it's nice to start off with, a favorable thing when we start talking about something with compliance where nobody's in trouble yet. So this was a good one to do for this episode. On the next episode, we'll probably look at one that was unfavorable so that we can see how those are written out and, ways that they explain why, things like that. So you can still kind of check through it. So thanks for having such a great episode and a good time with me today, Sonal.
For sure.
And thanks for everybody for watching us. And so we will see y'all on the next Compliance Capers.
The next Compliance Capers. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye-bye.